Welcome to the DNA of Purpose podcast. It is so exciting to have you guys live in the Forbes Street studio in Sydney today. I am just overjoyed that I get to have today's conversation with both of you. Welcome to the podcast, Fiona Vale and Paul Rush, the co-founders of Humanico.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Beck.
You are absolutely welcome. Now, as you guys know, I have a world of content to get through today, but I want to start with a question that I ask all of my guests. And it's kind of a question within a question, because what I'd like to know is, at this exact point in time, what question is currently guiding your work or your life forwards? I might kick off with you, Fee.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And when I saw this come through, and obviously having listened to previous episodes, the right now piece is really important to me. So for me, the statement here is, if we judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to think it's a failure. So that's really guiding everything, every principle of which we're designing some of our decisions at the moment. And for me, it's about being able to unearth and unlock what makes us uniquely special as individuals, and celebrate that and bring that to the surface.
I love that, especially in a conversation that is about decoding our DNA of purpose.
Exactly.
How about you?
Yeah, look, thanks. It's really simple for me. It's about impact. It's about changing the narrative. It's about leading the conversation. In fact, Fee, I remember very early on, we had a cup of coffee in Ash Street with a brilliant leader in our country, a lady called Rebecca. And we sat down and told her what we were about to do and why we were going to do it. And she was very demonstrative in her advice, which was go and lead the conversation, change the narrative, change the thinking. We've had a global pandemic. We've had a complete change in the way of work. And we have an opportunity to start to change how people feel about that. So for us, it's all about impact.
I love that. And there's so much power in startups at this particular point in time, writing new stories, because it's those stories that will fundamentally reshape the future today. And I can certainly attest to the fact, having done my research into Humanico, that you guys certainly have picked up the pen and are writing a new script with regards to how we really unlock the potential and the purpose of people.
Yeah, and there's actually a huge amount of work there. So to follow on what Paul said, part of the challenge in what we're doing is redrafting that narrative in terms of how organisations fundamentally at their core understand and appreciate their human asset. There is so much work that is done around the material asset and other assets within an organisation, and the human is often the last consideration there. A lot of people have been through very, very bad experiences through HR initiatives. So really we're going to start at the beginning and help people understand that there can be positive initiatives that happen in the place of work, and that things can be done for them to celebrate them, not necessarily done to them. It's part of our challenge.
Let's take it even further, right? At the end of the day, your people sit on the debt register. We've unlocked a way to change that conversation. If we get this right, we can move that thinking and actual calculation and move your people to the asset register. Not sure ASIC would agree, but that's okay.
So before we dive into the world of how we get the best out of our people, I would like to get inside your human story. Now, Fee, I've had the privilege of having you in my professional orbit, I'm going to say it, for almost, two decades. Mm-hmm. Scary, right? Yeah. Both you and I started out in the events and professional speaking industries. So I'm really fascinated to understand how all of that experience eventually led you to become the co-founder of an HR tech startup. Steve Jobs has a really great quote that I often share on this podcast. You can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards. So in light of that quote, when you look back across your journey, what I'd love to know is, what were the golden threads, the dots that led you to this exact point in time and that have catalysed your purpose today?
Again, another great question. I think as a natural strategic thinker, I'm all about connecting the dots all the time. So this quote really does strongly resonate with me. For me, the short answer is in this common thread that has connected everything through my first career through to time off, another career, and then to where I am today is through the lens of everyone matters. I'm a very curious human being who loves to celebrate what's right with people fundamentally. My first career was all centred around human experience. So what that means was it was actually my job to travel the world and unearth experiences for the best of the best financial advisors. So through that lens of literally money can buy anything, to consider an experience through the lens of, regardless of role, title and status, how do we understand and then anticipate the needs of a human being? Did that for 15 years, loved that. Took time out to start a family, retrained, as you know, in graphic design and brand strategy, which definitely played to a little bit of that. But at its core, my passion for people definitely outweighed my passion for pictures at the end of it. So I pivoted into another people-centric career and landed in the world of executive search, or headhunting for those who may not know what executive search is. That's where Paul and I collided in that space. But fundamentally, my experience in that entire new world was very different. I'd come from an industry where I'd spent 15 years building up my career. But there was no way for me in this new world order for that transferable aptitude and everything that I built along the way to be surfaced in the organisation. The whole premise of executive search is centred around a company spending a lot of money to find one very important person to solve a role or to fit into a role. What about everyone else? So for me, this perpetual question around everyone matters, what about everyone else, came to start to come to the surface and started to get that blood boiling of, I've got to try and do something about this. That yes, absolutely, that one person does make a difference. But imagine the power and impact if that organisation took the same investment and spread it across their entire workforce. What's possible then?
Yeah, it's really interesting to consider that in recruitment processes that we're maybe only considering a small percentage of somebody's assets. And again, in coming back to the DNA of purpose, there are so many things that will inform our true purpose, our true potential in the world. And that can come down to the trials that have shaped us, the people that have shaped us, alongside, the tools that we've gathered or the mastery that we've gained along the way. And what I love about your approach is you seem to speak to the full spectrum of how we really step into our potential as human beings in a variety of different ways professionally.
Yeah, we are. At the core of it, we are so much more than our resume. If organisations continue to fixate on skills and qualifications and define a human through that means and that means alone, they're never going to get the best out of them. It's not good for the individual, it's not good for their team, and it's not good for the broader organisation.
Fee, there's already so many rabbit holes that I want to go down, but I'm going to pull myself back here because we've got so much to cover off. Paul, I know today is our first meeting, although it feels like we're old friends, and I think anyone who has met you would probably have the same experience. I love to do a bit of research prior to the podcast, and I know in reviewing your profile that you've dedicated over 25 years to assessing individual skills, experience and suitability for various roles, while also mastering technology and the IT sector. I'm wondering if you could provide some insight into the origin story of Humanico and how, given your extensive experience, you believe this opportunity aligns with your overarching purpose in the world.
Cripes, there's a question for me. Thank you very much. And yes, we are probably old souls. We'll have that conversation offline, I suspect.
100%.
So look, for me, you're dead right. I dedicated my life to a journey, and that journey took me around the world. And during I think it was actually 27 years in total, in the world of recruitment and executive search, I honed my capability and talents down. I was always unorthodox in my approach, which didn't go down well with everybody. And I think one of the most important parts of the origin story was the collision with Fee. So back to Fee's story and how she entered the business and my role in the business. And I think she'll attest to the fact that, I was the first one who said, well, who are you and tell me about yourself and what do you want to do, as opposed to other people that, literally put people in boxes. What eventuated there was a real interest around curiosity, a real opportunity to be your natural self and have a transparent, open conversation, which led to us working together. And still to this day, I can say in all of my years of working with people, I've never met anybody who intuitively understands and gets people, and that's Fee. We worked together, and within the environment in which we were working, we were asked to take on a global innovation project, which was brilliant. I ended up going up to the board for presentation. I won't go into the details, but what happened then is what always happens in corporate world, or most often happens in corporate world, is that innovation program got some traction and then was killed, because it didn't fit in with the status quo of what was happening. That led Fee and I to start having conversations around, what about something else? What about if we were to look at this through a different lens? So mid-June, around 2019, we started to ideate this idea of building something different. It went through several iterations, and for us it was really refreshing to start to think about how could we change the narrative in the market. I've always been an entrepreneur right from the get-go. I ran a business at school, and I'm very proud to have said I sold something to my headmaster when I was 14 years old. Coming back to that unorthodox approach, part of that really is around, I think in my younger years, but now I'm a bit older, understanding that not everybody is wired the same way that I am, and that's okay. But actually for me, at my core is social justice. And if I see something that's unjust or unfair, I've learned to kind of control it now and use that kind of calm influence to distill and accept it. But for me, there is this notion of injustice that still is alive in the world in which we live in, without getting into macroeconomics, which we won't have time for today.
Next podcast.
I've
got that bookmarked.
But if you think about that whole, how do we take everyone matters, align that to what we're building and what we're doing, how it evolved, that collision in the workplace where you meet a meeting of minds comes together and you stop and think. And you meet somebody that galvanizes you, and then you have a problem, a shared problem that is a global problem. So yes, it does align to my core purpose.
I love that your approach to being unorthodox has essentially become a superpower for you in the Humanico mission, and that in you sharing that today, it also gives others the permission to own all of who they are, and to understand that some of the attributes that may have got them in trouble in high school are actually...
You've read my report?
Yeah, I certainly have. No, I actually lay the foundation for the kind of leaders that we need in the world today, because, whether we're talking about social justice issues, the environment, or equity in the workplace, business as usual doesn't cut it anymore.
No.
So it's apparent that both of you in your mission with Humanico recognised a significant issue regarding an organisation's traditional emphasis on investing in either leadership or in high-performing individuals, rather than taking your approach, which is everyone matters in the workplace. In looking at those issues, I'd like to hear more about how the Humanico platform goes about solving that challenge and ensuring that everybody receives the right kind of attention, the right kind of energy with regards to how they might go about stepping into their potential in the workplace. So would you guys be able to explain to me a little bit more about what key challenges Humanico addresses alongside the benefits and how it can help leaders and organisations?
I think, again, another great question. And if we come back to some of the previous statements, and this may be obvious, but if it's not, let's call out the obvious. We're both approaching this problem space from different perspectives. So if I talk about my perspective and how we're addressing the problem that addresses how I've seen my world, and then I think Fee will give us the other side of the problem, which means we combine those two experiences or life experiences to make sure we have enough tension in what we do and how we build and how we iterate. So for me, the obvious one was literally every time I would speak with a customer, so a board director, a head of people and culture, a CEO, there was always this underlying issue around trying to get a handle on their human asset and human capability. And in fact, it goes back to days of Peter Drucker. How do I have the right people in the right place at the right time? So my view was very much around board, around EBITDA, around profitability, around high performance, but also inclusion and belonging and trying to get that right. And nobody really managed to be able to sit down with a CEO or a people leader in manufacturing or in agriculture or in FMCG and say, so tell me about the capability that exists in your business and tell me about the risk that exists there. But more importantly, how do we optimize for that risk? The biggest challenge for us then was to build the accordion. How do we play to our customers, who invariably the people who are paying the bills, are engaging us to start with, but how do we make sure we join the dots between the executives and the janitor and everybody else in between?
Yeah, it's really interesting and I love it. It's such a privileged position to be in to actually hear our story reflected back to us. It's actually quite surreal. Effectively, what we have built is a digital and interactive human map for organisations. And I think when we look at Paul's perspective, if we look at the power of Paul's deep expertise in human capital, meeting my former world in human experience, we knew that outside of the fact that there was going to need to be sophisticated tech to bring this to life, we still had to have it connected via the human at the centre. And that's what we've effectively managed to do. In some ways, I am the actual avatar of our own business model. For me, as I said earlier, I landed in a completely new world without any way for who I was effectively to be surfaced. So what we're looking to do here is to consider the human more as a whole. So outside of those skills and qualifications in isolation, who are they at their core? So starting to bring in additional metrics of capability around how people naturally think, feel and behave, and then overlay that with a measure of motivation and engagement that is tied back to the individual and how they feel about their work. The programs of work that we do are very intentional by design in terms of the narrative and the journey. If we're asking people to be incredibly forthcoming with the data that we need to yield for these programs of work to be effective, it has to be inclusive. It has to be interactive. There has to be something in it for everybody. And that's a key part here is that, again, coming back to the core mission around and the purpose with everyone matters. Every individual, when they come through the experience, gets something out of it from day one. They don't have to wait for 3 or 6 months to get a report back from their leader. They can get actionable insights into who they are as a human from day one. To your point earlier around how we've been, so many of us are still so negatively conditioned and we've had such poor experiences. Let me ask you, Beck, have you ever been in a situation where either a teacher or a boss has said to you, well, look, Bex, you've done this bit really, really well, but actually you've failed with all of this. Let's help you in where you're weak and we're going to rewire you as a human. It's happened to everyone. And that's part of the challenge here is to actually reverse that psychology to say, let's work with what you do have. Let's look at who you are and not who you are not. And know that as an individual, you need not be well-rounded as one person. Surround yourself, if you can surround yourself intentionally with those complementary strengths and skills to bring that team to life, you're going to get the best out of everyone.
Imagine Minority Report. So if you want a visual for your viewers and your readers,
I was about to ask you.
Think about a digital map where you've surfaced all of that capability, not just through traditional lines and hierarchy and skills and quals, but you've got literally a mosaic of people and you understand. Then once you've got your base map in place, how do we optimize?
Yeah.
So you start to move the pieces of the jigsaw around the board.
Yeah.
Then you've got the dynamic teams, which I'm sure we'll come and talk about a bit later. But maybe that that quote from Joe Thompson would kind of sum it up.
Yeah, I think so, because for us, obviously, we're mad passionate founders and we love what we do and we do what we love, and we're very, very lucky to have that. But Joe Thompson, who is a supporter of Humanico, he is a leading voice through the future of work, based in the US at Booz Allen. He sums it up really well to say that it's not enough to understand your workforce as data elements in a table or in a single dashboard. Growth, productivity, resilience and innovation will only come from understanding your workforce as the unique ecosystems of humans that they actually are. And I think that really sums up what we're doing here. We're not bringing data together for the sake of data. We're really trying to bring to life the human map of an organisation.
100%. And look, there are so many threads of genius to this. Firstly, despite the Humanico platform being tech-enabled, and I know you guys also weave into that artificial intelligence, counterintuitively, the focus is on truly what it means to be human. And what I'm talking about there is that you guys are tapping into evolutionary intelligence, you know, reconnecting us to the fact that humans need each other. We are at an evolutionary level meant to work in tribes. We don't have to be everything to everybody. It is okay that we have a specific gift because that gift sits within a greater body of intelligence. And I think Humanico really captures that essence so beautifully, captures the essence that we thrive when we belong. We thrive when we matter. And you're enabling leaders a way to be able to measure the human experience through the creation of almost what I view as digital tribes, where pieces can be swapped out, changed and manoeuvred based on the specific goal or outcome that the leader is hoping to achieve, and that you can get real-time feedback along the way. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I have translated Humanico.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think what you've touched on there is that sense of belonging, which is core to who we are as humans.
Yeah.
But what you need to fulfill that as your role in the tribe is very different to my needs in that role as well. So that's what we're essentially doing here, is to say that a one-stop shop, a cookie-cutter approach to this will never work. To create that true sense of belonging and the value of tribes and communities within the workforce as well, to underpin that with a scientific and data-led approach, it gives you, I mean, the cultural benefits, hopefully we get a chance to touch on that as well. But what we're doing here is providing a common language. So again, when we start to think about the importance of being connected, being part of a tribe and what that means, and being able to fulfill the needs of different individuals at different times is really, really powerful.
And there's another layer to this, because, you know, thanks to the pandemic, we have now had a once in a generation change to the way that we work, most notably hybrid working. So never before have we needed to be able to connect people to our workplace culture, to these communities, more so than we need to now. Given this current era characterised by these trends, how does Humanico support leaders in embracing the mindset shifts necessary to bolster their business, especially when I know from doing a bit of research, a lot of CEOs are actually grappling and struggling a little bit with how they go about leading their organisation when their organisation is in 1,000 different places?
I love this question. And fundamentally at the core, you can't make these types of decisions without data.
Yeah.
Part of our early market testing and through Paul's world, very, very well connected into a number of C-suite executives and CEOs globally, that we could test the concept. Is this just us, or is it actually a problem that's being faced by leaders across the globe? If you ask any good leader or any CEO what their greatest asset is, they will proudly stand up very tall and say, well, it's my people. But you ask them to break that down and say, well, tell me about your people. And that's where the wheels start to fall off. Good leaders historically have built these relationships and have built these data sets in water cooler conversations. What we're able to do now is quantify that data. It's a huge risk to an organisation if that leader that has built up that knowledge bank leaves the organisation. They take all of that with them. the next person that comes in has to start again from scratch. So what we're looking at doing is providing a way to understand the asset, as we said, through a common language, but provide a way for leaders to be able to utilise that data for everyone. It's not a different language set or a different program that's done for the executives or the leadership team or for high potentials. This is a program of work that unlocks that for everybody. So having that common data set is incredibly important. We touched on this before. Every employee is unique. So a one-stop shop, cookie-cutter approach across an organisation, any organisation, is never actually going to work. We need to provide leaders with the data and insights to help them lead better. Statistically, we know that only 3 out of 10 people are naturally able to manage people. For a lot of people, there's been a notion of vertical reward through an organisation. You've done 100%. A good job and you get promoted. You've done a good job, you get promoted.
Hierarchical structure.
Typical
where
hierarchical.
Really what we're needing is this flattening, and rather than power over people, it's about stepping into empowering those people.
Correct. Yeah. And look, even if that is the way in an organisation and that is the way that you reward and recognise your people, you've got to help them with the tools along the way. If you are gifting a person, you are rewarding a person to say, well, good news, you now get to manage a team of 20 people globally or 50 people globally, and they're not naturally a good leader or know how to leader. It will fail. They will fail. Their people will fail. The organisation will fail. So it's really about bringing that data to life. It's simple. It doesn't have to be complicated, Bex. That's the beauty of data these days, is that you can keep it simple, be able to leverage the data and insights and the benefits of some of the tools that we're integrating into the platform to give real life examples day on, day out. How do I know my team? How are my team wired? How do I need to feed them to get the best out of them?
I wanted to jump in, if I could, quickly on 2 points that you made earlier, which is one is the change in workforce dynamics. So, don't take our word for it. Look at Dan Riley and the work that he's doing at Radical, and he's been doing this for a long time. There are others supporting this, which is we're looking at the productization of career journeys. So the career journeys we had of old no longer exist. So what that means is, as an organization, each individual is going to have a different career journey. That's a lot for CEOs and HRDs to bite off, because they've got to have a standardized process, whether it's a legal requirement, or it's employment law requirement, or whether it's just because this is the way we do it. That doesn't work anymore. Hybrid work is a great example. We know through the way people think, feel, and behave who is going to benefit from being in the office and who is going to be more productive working from home. So again, we're starting to see the evolution of this. You're dead right in your earlier statement. A lot of leaders don't know where to go. So, without a sales plug, and it's not a sales plug because it's reality, first understand who you have. Understand what that composition looks like, then optimize for your business and for your people. That's the key. It's that accordion between here and here. And that's why I think one of the reasons why, Humanico continues to get so much interest and so much succession.
Paul, I want to stay with you for a minute.
Oh, thank you.
We've already discussed that you guys have really leveraged the spaces in between. So we've already spoken about the dynamics between your partnership and what you're creating together as co-founders. But you've also managed to leverage these really interesting intersections within the Humanico platform. One aspect stood out to me, and that was the adoption of the more circular, agile approach to human performance and employee engagement, as opposed to the traditional linear approach. Now, while those in the technology sphere may be familiar with Agile frameworks, I found Humanico's approach to be particularly innovative in regards to how you applied this to people management. Could you delve into the importance of integrating human performance with Agile team building practices?
I can try. And look, each company's different. So there are two big statements here, which, is difficult when you're trying to scale a business, because, you need to look for the commonality around scaling and around repeatable processes and automation. But for us, every organization is different. So to start with, let's come back to that fundamental principle. Who do I have in my own backyard? How do I understand what I have? How do I communicate effectively between the leaders and the peoples and the leaders? So to create that body of trust, that wave that goes back and forward. So as you said, that circular interaction. Once we've got that in place, then we can start to really hone it, which is where the Agile model comes in and really starts to take off. So for us, we have a number of dynamic team functions in your digital platform where you can start to look at how you really leverage the power of agility and putting the right people with the right other people to build teams and to build effective capability. The trouble and I guess the real challenge is in a linear model where you're assessing someone from a performance on productivity perspective against the role that they are hired to do, doesn't work anymore. So you have to have different intersections. You have to have different feedback loops. So we work with one brilliant, fabulous consulting company who are across 6 countries, and we've been working with them for a long time. We had to build a completely new architecture to cater for a true Agile model. So as you would know, in an Agile space, as an employee, you have 3 managers, not 1. So we had to re-architect our business to ensure that we were getting the right feedback loops for those individuals, but also enabling them to continually evolve their Agile teams. So if you look at some of the bigger companies where they're looking at an Agile model to change digital transformation and operating rhythm, then actually those people may be on a project for 6 months, then they roll off. And then you start thinking about, well, how do I empower all of my people and give people, back to everyone matters, the same opportunities? And we'll come on and talk to you about that a little bit later, by matching highly motivated teams with someone whose motivation is dropping, and you start to see the results. It's a bit like a sports team, but again, I'll stop there.
Power of proximity.
Correctamundo.
Yeah. I love this idea for so many reasons, and again, I'm going to go down the rabbit hole because I think it's worthwhile.
Thank you, Alice.
With regards to preparing people and organisations for exponential progress, I love this Agile framework as a way of thinking about disruption and rapid change, because as human beings, we tend to extrapolate out into the future. We think in a linear fashion. But technology doesn't work that way. Those changes are happening all around us, all at the same time. So to take that way of thinking and to empower your team to start to think in that way enables them to move through exponential change as those waves come along with a lot more grace, because rather than thinking about it as this linear process, you're able to look at how people are integrating new technologies through these feedback loops and enable an organisation to upskill people and also give them the mindset shifts to be able to leverage those waves as they come along. I did say it was a big rabbit hole.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in there and follow you down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, let's go.
Look, I mean, clearly we agree with you 100%. And I think what you're talking to here is, as you said, that preparedness of the human. We do a lot of work, and obviously, whilst the core technology is a SaaS platform, we also do have our own consulting arm where we can start to bring some of these concepts to life more broadly within an organisation. What you're talking about there is one of the frameworks of which we actually work with companies to dive a little bit deeper, which is in the first instance around awareness, then appreciation, and into action. So what you were just touching on there is to have that, instead of this fixed mindset and blinkers on, I'm here in an organisation to do a job, this is my role, and this is what I need to do, to have that constant awareness of what's going on around you and be prepared more adequately for change to happen. We know that organisations are complex. Humans are complex. Organisations are complex. So part of the Humanico solution is to keep up with that. So it is a dynamic solution. This is not a one and done map to look at your organisation at a point in time. We check in monthly with all of our customers to track new joiners, anyone that's left and anyone that moves. What happens there when you start to look at the broader data sets is to your point, you get to understand the nuance of change within an organisation. Your skills profile will be shifting. Your strengths profile will be shifting. Other metrics around capability will be shifting through these micro-tailored or micro-nuances in change across the year. It's really important to be able to track and measure that, because all of a sudden the dynamic of your workforce is very different, or could be very, very different. The way people are showing up and how they think, feel and behave could be very different. So to have a broad awareness about that, to bring that down and connect it to appreciation. So to say, this is who I am, and that's great because. So working with who we are and not who we are not. But again, to be able to have an awareness of what's around us, what we can tap into. Paul touched on, I know we'll go into this a little bit more in a minute, well, hopefully, around the nature of dynamic teams. Very, very rarely these days are you employed into a role to do a job. We're seeing more and more requirements for a Swiss Army knife approach to how employees are connected to an organisation. That is very, very difficult if you are inflexible in how you actually view the human to do the role. So this is where we're starting to triangulate some of these other data points around that to encourage that fluidity and to essentially be able to keep people more awake, more aware, more energised, more connected to the organisation.
And I think the overlay there, funnily enough, in just listening to both of you is, as founders, that's what we do, right?
Yeah,
so we live that life every day. So as we build out our business and our team and our technology and our platform, it's with our customers, it's with our people, and we're constantly pivoting. And I think one of the reasons why, again, we have so much impact against some of the bigger HRIS systems that are still needed and still important, they're clunky. It's like changing direction for an oil tanker. Whereas if you work with a startup or a scale-up, you can start to really hone in on what matters. If you work with some of those big organizations, they're already hardwired. You can only do this. You've got to step out. Correct. There is no agility. And that's really how we work. In fact, if we look at our own strengths as a combination, we share 6 of the same top 10 strengths, which is highly unusual. And both lead with strategic and futuristic. So apparently we should have been founders.
You're on the right path. You got something right.
Well, a few things.
Actually, you guys got a lot right. Look, we've already touched on this a little bit in the conversation today, but I want to dive back into this subject because I'm pretty sure there is a lot more to unpack here. And that's in relation to the power of building these internal communities and tribes, and in looking at why this is actually a superpower in order to be able to future-proof your business. So how can Humanico assist organisations in really being able to not only efficiently map, which we've looked at, but also mobilise these communities?
Yeah, and it's a really great point. I think the key point here is that there are very few humans that work in isolation in a business. Day to day and through different interactions, we are required for most of us are required as part of our job to play a part and interact with other humans. So to be able to map that in the first instance, as you said, is incredibly powerful. From our early pilots, so for us it was all about the digital human map. That's where we started. What happens in technology and in any business is once you start to get out to market, you start to get that customer feedback coming through. And when our early customers had their human maps, they saw the power of that mobilisation and they said to us, do you think that there's a way that we can harness this information to be able to build out dynamic teams and dynamic groupings? We're like, yes. Trial and error, yes, we can. So what we're able to do is actually map back in the core map itself. The data is hardwired to the role that you have in the organisation, but the power outside of that is being able to build any kind of dynamic grouping. So outside of your core role, if you're attached to a committee or a subgroup, or if you are an organisation that is moving into new markets or new opportunities, you can actually drag and drop hypothetical teams ahead of time and run the metrics to understand what that group would be like working together before you press go. There is a tremendous amount of power in that. If you can understand the data that sits behind it and know that not everyone is going to get along, not everyone is going to be a powerful combination. We've seen time and time again leaders and organisations who study one successful individual and then press copy and paste and build out a team of, we call them team of Barrys. It happens time and time again. And
so unrealistic.
It's so unrealistic.
It just seems so disconnected.
It is. I mean, I can understand the theory behind it. This individual has been successful in this role, in this organisation.
Do
what they do.
Yeah.
Now, what happens there, and we know that,
Dance monkey.
Yes, exactly. But what happens there is it fails time and time again. It fails, and it's because of that lack of intentional diversity. So that's what we can do here is when you can pull together any kind of dynamic group, you can do it on purpose. If you are leading or stepping into a new project where you know historically to be effective, you need to lead that engagement with influence. You need to have some people there that are entirely comfortable to sell that idea. You've got to have some strategic thinking to back that up. And then as the project rolls out, you need to have the doers. Things need to get done. Then you've got to worry about the relationship management, the people management side of things. Paul touched on earlier as well, the opportunity to intentionally pull people in who are disengaged and not highly motivated in their role. If you can pull cohorts together, tribes, communities within an organisation on purpose and for the right reason, the impact and the results are tremendous. And we're starting to build some of these data sets now, obviously of our own customers. We are industry agnostic, so we can effectively map any team or group of more than 20 people in any organisation. But when you start to see some of the power of these communities come together, the entire solution is underpinned by positive psych. So because of that, you also start to get these bubbling side effects of contagious enthusiasm. So again, talking to the importance of a sense of belonging, being tied to purpose, feeling like you matter, feeling like you are seen and feel like you are heard, and to be celebrated for who you are. It's like making a cake, right? If you get the ingredients right and you mix it and you've got that proven formula, then the success will be there.
Yeah, and I mean, data is your superpower.
Absolutely.
In this sense, because it's not just a matter of putting the teams together and going, hey, let's, suck it and see. You actually have the data that is measuring whether those people are fulfilled, whether they are leaning into growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have had it said to us early on that it's, is this essentially corporate horoscopes? And there's which I know would probably resonate with you. There is an element of what would happen if, and hence the whole hypothetical teams, but to your point, it is data-led. We're providing people leaders with the tools to make better informed data-led decisions. It is underpinned by scientific frameworks, which means that we can leverage the benefits realisation of that 50, 100%. 60, 70 years of data and research that's gone in behind it.
It's intelligent intuition.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it backs up your gut feel. There's nothing wrong with gut feel, and gut feel gives you so much. In fact, we had one customer who knows they get about 80% of their decisions right, but the 20% that they don't get right, they can get right now.
So, Paul, I want to have a chat about another corporate hotspot, that being diversity and inclusion. Now, we only have to look to the world of science to understand the power of diversity by design. We see it in every natural system.
Yep.
So what I would like to explore is what insights you guys have gained about the intersection of high performance, engagement, and diversity within a platform where teams can be intentionally diversified. How has that impacted your understanding of, organisational dynamics and effectiveness?
Yeah, it's a good question. Again, I think for us, pointing out the fact that we are triangulating data, we are leveraging Fee's experience in building human experience. So I just wanted to, just make sure that the listeners understood that we're still looking at an experiential journey. So yes, the data is the single source of truth, but to get that data, we need to take people on a journey. And you'd be surprised about how many companies are making people decisions based on less than 45% participation. We're getting 92% plus participation because of the way we're building the narrative and engaging people. So when you look at diversity, inclusion in particular, and belonging, if you can't have your people on the bus in the first instance, so you can't have that initial understanding and engagement by giving back to everybody, not just limiting it to the top, that sets the bar for us to build and work with our customers and our customers to work with their people to actually build a trust environment. So that's number one. The DE&I metrics that we can surface are across the board. Any that we want to surface, we can surface. You can then filter, you can cut. So yes, of course, we can tick any kind of board reporting that you want to tick, albeit the real data's there. So with us, you can't actually tell the board what you want to tell them because you can't hide behind what the data's telling you. The real power for us is that triangulation of capability, engagement, and skills into the one platform, which gives us a complete view of your human asset and the potential that sits there. So when we're looking at diversity, we're bringing all those things together to allow you to build the best teams, not just for the company or for return on profit or return on spend, for your people as well. Then here's the real catch. We now are able to surface and recognize diversity of thought. So there's a lot of rhetoric around gender. There's a lot of rhetoric around other diverse metrics. Nobody's really cracked the diversity of thought piece yet. And this came out of the Higgs report in the UK back in 2003 when they were looking at the skewing of boards. Now, again, we started to see much more development around DE&I. And in fact, one of our customers we're about to work with, they're very keen on the DE&I element of how we not only capture and expose the data, but how are we real? How do we actually go back to our people and say we recognize diversity, we support diversity, and we intentionally create diverse teams in our business? That's how we're seeing it materially come to life with our customers.
There's another layer to that as well, and another example from one of our early customers, which is if you see it, you can act upon it. If you can see it, you can beat it. It's that whole framework. And there are some lovely side effects by just surfacing these core metrics around D&I in the platform. It's tied to your humans. It's very, very visible at any point in time. We were working with a small company based in Melbourne, heading into a phase of growth. So for them, it was about understanding who they had now, but also as they grow and scale, making sure that they had those diversity metrics covered. What we understood through the initial mapping phase was that an entire business unit, it was a very, very happy place to be. So their results around motivation and engagement were tremendously high. There was clearly a good vibe, a good energy in that entire cohort. But when you look at it on paper, they all sat within one age band. So hence it was Pleasantville. They were all like-minded, but they weren't getting the business outcomes and results because of that simple lack of diversity. So whilst they were well matched across gender metrics, across the board, age banding and age brackets was letting them down. So when they were going out into market, they didn't have that depth of knowledge and industry experience to actually solidify some of those returns on investment. So whilst it's not a primary use case for us, certainly it is, we're aware of it, and it's a lovely side effect or benefit of having that all in the one place at the one time. And again, keeping an eye on it as it ebbs and flows.
I love that you guys brought up neurodiversity in the conversation. How does the platform measure thought process?
Do you want to take that one?
Well, it's a really good question. I mean, the way that we're looking at how people are wired to naturally think, feel and behave is tied back to the Clifton Strengths Assessment. So that's one of the tools that we use, which is essentially looking at all humans and boiling it down actually into a very, very simple framework to say that there are 34 themes of talent that we all have. We just have them in a different order. Those themes of talent are then mapped back to primary domains. So they will be linked back to the domain of execution or strategic thinking or influence or relationship building. So that's how we're actually to understand. And when you start to peel back the layers of data that sit behind each of those themes of talent, there are nuances for every themes. There are reasons why it's a superpower. So again, help people understand why it is important and it is powerful to have these themes of talent. But equally, like any kind of muscle, it needs to be trained. What do we need to feed these themes of talent to get the best out of them? What does it look like if these themes of talent are unfed, if they are malnourished? How does that actually translate to bad behaviour in an organisation? So it's really looking at these different metrics around the fact that facing any given scenario, how you approach the problem space and how I approach the problem space will be naturally very different at the core. If you can have an understanding around that, it means that we're going to be able to move forward together much, much quicker. You're going to know what you can count on me for. I'm going to know what I can rely on you for. If you build that out through an entire team or an entire division and then across the whole org, everything is just humming and operating.
Just the trust factor in that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it takes certain things off the table. If I know without even thinking, and we live and breathe this day to day in Humanico. Of course, we use our own tool in our own business. We are very well aware of our own team's strengths and capabilities, and we leverage that. As a startup heading into a phase of scale up, it's incredibly important that we have the opportunity to play to our strengths on a daily basis. I know where Paul's strengths are. He knows where my strengths are. We have that across the broader team. It means that we don't waste time in decision making or fighting it out to say, well, who's going to take this? Who's going to take what? We can naturally go into our corners where we are in an optimal mode, where we can be the best versions of ourselves. And again, come down to the bottom line benefits there. As a result, we're happier as individuals, we're more motivated, we're more engaged, and we're more productive. So again, it's this ripple effect of building that out through partnerships, through teams across a broader organisation.
And let me just lift it up and be boring, or lift it down a bit.
I hardly think you would ever be boring, Paul.
But just for your listeners, you can't visually see this human map, but you can filter by any metric. So when we talk about diversity of thought, you can filter through all those 34 themes of talent. So if you want to find agility, you can find it, where it exists, how are you going to expose it, how are you going to use it. If you want to find woo, which is winning others over, it's my third superpower, you can do that. And then from a neurodiversity perspective, we know there's a direct link between neurodiverse and motivation. So our curated motivation engagement index, which ties back how you're feeling about the work you're doing. You'd be surprised, or maybe not actually, Beck, to know that 85% of weighting on most engagement surveys are around leadership. So it's no wonder we're not getting true results. It's no wonder we're not getting people to opt in and share their real feelings about how they feel. Ask them how they feel about the work they're doing. They'll be honest. Ask them how they feel about their manager. They may not.
It also gives you the opportunity to actually compare and tailor for peers. So if you have two humans in an organisation that have been recruited into the same role and are being measured by the same outputs and KPIs and metrics and OKRs and all the other lovely acronyms that sit alongside that, it's entirely unfair and unhelpful to expect that those two people will be able to do it in the same way and to get the same outcome. So again, looking at harnessing the power of the information, the data that we have around understanding how we all think and feel and behave differently, you can micro-tailor the role to suit the individual. You can say, output, outcome led. This is what we need to achieve, but we will encourage you to do it in a way that is aligned to who you are. So you're not swimming against the current there. You are going with your natural talents to help you be able to achieve those goals easier. So there's lots of little examples.
The phrase fail fast keeps popping into my mind. But what I love about this is it's like fail fast at what you're good at.
Yes.
There's no point failing at what you're going to fail at anyway.
That's right. Yeah. And encourage people to be experimental there as well. So, through these core themes of talent, they will show up, even though Paul and I have 6 of the same top 10 themes of talent. How they show up to each of us is different based on the themes of talent that surround them and influence them. So you can nerd out on this all day if you want to.
Oh my gosh, we could spend hours here.
We could.
But I want to move away from human intelligence into the world of artificial intelligence. Now, I know a lot of leaders or people in general are really grappling to get their head around artificial intelligence. But the reality is that AI was designed by humans to help humans. And even though our focus is on the technology, counterintuitively, it is actually placing a big magnifying glass on what it means to be human. And I think Humanico is a really beautiful example of this in action. So what I'd love to know a little bit more about is, firstly, how you guys are using AI to amplify the human experience. But at another level, just as co-founders, how are you guys navigating the ethical side of AI? Because, it is such a big topic of conversation right now.
It's a huge topic of conversation. organisation, and we were just in at the South Start conference in Adelaide last week. Big shout out to Danielle and the whole team for the work they did pulling that together. It was insane. AI is a hot topic at the moment in the startup ecosystem and more broadly across the world. We have an interesting approach to AI, and for us, we know that there is value there, 100%. There is no doubt about that. But for us, we are layering it out slowly through our tool. We want to make sure that we are not diving into AI for the sake of it, and that we can actually tie that back to value for the individuals and for those who are utilising the data itself. Experience is king. So for us, we're still doing a lot of experiments around how we can actually take that experience and layer it out through intelligence to improve efficiencies. At the core, Humanico, I mean, the brand itself, so it's all about celebrating who we are as individuals and as a collective. So human plus I plus co is Humanico. We will always be tied to the human at the centre here. So we're layering it out. A good example of, yes, we are using AI. We're using AI around our motivation engagement survey. So when we start to, if you think through any kind of employee engagement survey that you've been a part of, there is generally a mix of quantitative data and qualitative data. Traditionally in organisations, it's someone's job, once those results come in, to take all of that qualitative data and scour through it to try and call out common themes or sentiment analysis across what it's like to be a human in your organisation right now.
Or pick what they want to pick out.
Yeah, we're not going to open that can of worms. We can, but I don't think that's what we're here to do. So for us, it's about layering it out and about adding value through that AI. So if we can use AI through our qualitative analysis to bring to the surface a high-level summary statement of the sentiment of that cohort, and then call out the top 10 themes that have been, mentioned by that particular group, it's going to serve two purposes. One, it's going to make the feedback loop quicker. So if you as an organisation are asking your people to contribute data through these types of engagement surveys, the worst thing that you can do is have a huge gap between communicating back, or even worse, not communicate at all. So we can provide that information within the portal to say, this is what it's like to be a human in your organisation right now. Now, acknowledging that you can't attack everything and there's going to be different priorities that sit, within the organisation more broadly. But the secondary benefit there is it's helping people leaders know where to focus their time, effort and energy. So again, saving them the time to go through the data themselves. It's a good example of us being able to use AI to bring that sentiment analysis to the surface. So it's where we've started. We are working towards, at the moment, it is a client-centric portal for super users only. We are working towards a user-centric version of the Humanico platform, and that's where we'll start to see more value and more insights through AI, but again, through a layered approach, and only when we know that we can do it ethically and that we can stand behind the value that it brings.
And it's not just us. So as you would expect of a company, or maybe you wouldn't, but a company of our ilk, and the journey we've been on, we have an advisory council, and on that advisory council are experts in AI, in technology, and also in HR, both in Australia, in Singapore, in the UK and the US. So we've got an advisory council where not only do they get to see our product roadmap, but they get the opportunity to ask us all sorts of questions, good, bad, and indifferent.
So the next topic of conversation is really at the core of this podcast. And what I want to dive into here is the nature of human purpose. Something that I've noticed over the years is we'll see, organisations with these big purpose statements. We're here to do X, Y, Z. Now, I'm an advocate for any organisation creating social impact, but I've often found that there can be a little bit of a disconnect between what the organisation thinks its purpose is, as in they've retrofitted the purpose, and how employees are actually experiencing purpose on the ground. Because at the end of the day, regardless of the overarching statement of why, if somebody isn't feeling at a visceral level a deep connection to fulfillment, then one might argue they're not experiencing purpose. And so because this is my sweet spot, I'm dying to ask you guys, what have you learnt about the nature of an individual's purpose and experience of meaning in the workplace?
It's such a good question, and I'm so glad and not surprised at all that you went here. It's really, really hard to retrofit purpose. That's essentially, it's like building a house and wanting to shift the plumbing around once you've already poured the concrete, right? The way that we are seeing this play out in the real world is in two different, very distinct camps. There are those who have an outward-facing purpose, which has clearly been a dictation from the board or someone else to say we need to have a purpose statement and we need to be peddling that out to market. There are those companies that are doing that. Never going to work. Never going to, as you said, what is it? What is the hook then that the individual can connect into when it's all outward-facing and it's actually not reflected inwardly? Then there are those who are actually shining the mirror internally and are genuine and authentic in terms of their outward-facing purpose statement and their inward-facing purpose statement. I think the biggest shift that we've seen is across the last couple of years is through COVID, where a lot of individuals walked away from big glamorous careers because they no longer had that sense of connection to purpose. There was effectively a global people crisis. If we look at the power and impact through the global financial crisis, we're seeing a similar impact now through the global people crisis and how people leaders are grappling with that internally. There's a lot of humans that put themselves out there to say that I no longer want to be a number in the system. I want to do something that matters to me. So having clear articulation on that purpose is critical from a cultural perspective, and that underpins the narrative and the journeys that we send the employees through the Humanico experience. We work with our customers to design that narrative to make sure that it is connected to their purpose, to make sure that it is connected to their language and to the story that they are telling, both themselves internally and externally as well. So I think that's one element that's really, really important here. Outside of where we've come from, so outside of former role status or career, it's very, very hard to have any kind of connection to purpose if you're not clear on who you are and what matters to you.
Yeah.
So that's where we can start to layer additional data points around measures of ambition, around values as well. If we can create, again, data-driven insights to connect an individual's purpose to that of the organisation or an individual's value statement to that of the organisation, you can actually match that fit and create a better outcome from the beginning.
And the overlay there is through the platform. So outside of the recognition of the uniqueness of everybody and how that works in an individual team and whole of company level, if we go back to the motivation engagement survey that we spent a long time working with to get right through the lens of psychological safety, there's a lot of that is around your connection to purpose. So with the organisations we're working with, we're getting a quarterly insight and in the ability to change and listen. So, purpose, yes, purpose is there. It's your North Star, but not everybody follows that North Star. So how do you work at the margins to ensure your listening is up to speed and you're playing back? Outside of that, from our personal perspectives, we know which leaders are going to work with Humanico, and invariably we know which leaders aren't going to work with Humanico.
That's interesting.
So
that doesn't surprise me at all, though.
There are leaders out there who genuinely want to invest and help their people, be it inside the organisation or we're going to invest in you and we know you're going to leave. And we want to encourage you to be better and you may come back one day or you may be a customer. So it's that circular piece again. And then there are leaders that, quite frankly, don't get it and will never get it.
And I think Humanico commands an integrity and a transparency.
Correct.
Because all of a sudden, what you say is going to be measured against data. Everybody can see what's going on.
Not only that, but everybody goes through the same process. So whether you're the CEO or, again, it doesn't matter who else you are in the organisation. I don't want to be hierarchical in my answer. We all go through the same process. And yes, your leaders absolutely need to get behind this. And if the leaders aren't prepared to get behind this, it's going to work. So, we'd rather walk away from those discussions than actually engage with an organisation that's not actually interested in going on this journey.
Yeah. So I've reached out to both of you to explore some of the areas that you guys feel are really important in regards to how Humanico can help organisations. And one of the areas that you suggested was around the power of Humanico to help organisations seamlessly integrate mergers and acquisitions. Can you share with me a little bit more about why you're passionate about this subject and how Humanico is working with organisations to enable more seamless integration and a better experience for people going through this?
Yeah. Sure. Let me jump in. And I guess actually, probably since we last swapped notes, our view on this particular subject matter keeps evolving and changing. Yeah. Hey, we're founders. We do evolve. We listen. We change. So for us, there's actually a very big opportunity here for impact. And the biggest statement, I guess, for us is that for anybody who's been involved in M&A, whether you're on the buy side, the sell side, or the post-merger integration side, we all know how much due diligence is done on the fixed assets, on the capital, on the risk. But I can tell you hand on heart that the majority of organisations, not everybody, but most organisations will do a cursory skim along the top and they'll lock in their key executives. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you've got key executives driving strategy who are the lifeblood of the firm in terms of success, then you need to lock those people in. But that's it. So let's say between 1% and 5% of your human asset is truly understood pre that happening. Just imagine if you could actually understand all of your people and all the benefits realization. For us, the real rubber hits the road when you actually go through the post-merger integration. And we have one customer that's gone through 15, 16 now acquisitions, 16 different cultures, 16 different businesses. So just imagine the power of integrating those people. Then think about if we can change what essentially is about an 18-month process out the other side to fully or partly integrate an organization. If we could help you understand all of your people on both sides of the fence or multiple sides and integrate them, that 18 months becomes 6 months. So if you want to get hardcore, let's talk about the cost of post-merger integration to a PE company or an investment bank or a large global firm that's looking to make acquisitions and roll up into a mass business. We can actually shorten that length of time. Plus, we can do it in a human way. You start to really look at all of your people. We had a great example where we spoke to somebody who literally years ago was thrown into a situation where he was told to turn up at work at 6 o'clock. He was the leader of that business across APAC, had 2 lists, those that were staying and those that were going. Nothing else. Didn't understand what sat behind it.
Situation to be in.
I think, look, for me, I think it's a classic case of if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. What we know is that around 70 to 90% of mergers and acquisitions fail through that integration side. The people becomes the lost cousin through all of this, as Paul was saying, the diligence that's done ahead of that transaction without considering those who are actually being impacted on the front line. It's an incredibly daunting experience. And again, imagine the human experience. They're rocking up to work and literally, which list are you on? Are you staying or are you going? No context, no warning. You're either with the organisation or you're no longer with the organisation. We often talk about it through the notion of an integration of step workers in a similar way that relationships might come together. This integration of step workers, these humans, these individuals, these teams haven't asked for any of this. They've been thrown into a situation where all of a sudden they have a new BAU. And to be effective with that BAU, they are being expected to get to know their people, get to know the new normal very, very quickly. So part of the effectiveness of the Humanico solution is to come in and actually manage some of the unification through that other side. Consider the human through that process. Actually start to map the asset that you now have through that combined entity and start to build a one again instead of a series of component parts. Again, coming back to the topic earlier around the importance of a sense of belonging, the importance of tribe, the importance of community. If you don't have some of these tools available to you, what chance do you have of which is why we're not surprised by some of these stats that sit out there to say 70 to 90% of it is going to fail. It doesn't have to be like that. I think if we can look at the data and actually track the sentiment, what is it like to be a human through this experience? look at the capability before and after that acquisition as well, we're allowing the organisations not only to mitigate the risk, but we can maximise synergies and actually work towards providing this cohesive space. Is it going to work all the time? Absolutely not. But it's a very good place to start in terms of driving that new normal through a newly merged entity.
But even hard metrics, right? If you want to talk to a, excuse my French, hard-arsed investment banker that's looking at 10x multiple through the purchase, how much value walks out the door from an IP perspective, from a trust perspective, and actually from a culture perspective, because you don't have the tool to see it.
Yeah.
And this is not about soft lining, absolutely putting the human at the center. But at the same time, and I think that's where we work really well together, Fee will always bat for the individual. I'll always come in and say, okay, well, what is the board going to think of this? And consequently, we've got a value equation here, and it's straight line. No, we're not forgetting the human. Absolutely, the human needs to be at the center. But think about the additional value you can retain by understanding that Mary in accounts actually will be really good in marketing. Yet Mary may be a casualty through this, not through Mary's fault. But if you can retain Mary, just imagine what happens to Mary. And then Mary's offsider. And then Mary goes to a dinner party over the weekend and talks about the fact that she's been part of an acquisition, and people have gone, oh, are you okay? She's talked about it in a positive way, et cetera, et cetera.
There's still a long way to go, but as I said, I think it's a good place to start to be able to consider the human asset and to prioritise that through the decision-making process.
100%. And the common theme in everything that you have both shared today is that the decision is in the vision. If, as you said before, if you can't see what's going on, you can't actually make intentional or informed decisions around how to leverage your most important asset.
Absolutely.
The very people who are driving your business forward.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Fee, as we come to the conclusion of today's podcast, I wanted to ask you about your experience as a female co-founder. We had International Women's Day, I think it was last week, and I know the theme has been all around investing in her. What has been your experience on the ground as a female co-founder, sharing what you do with the world in order to get investors on board? How have you navigated that space?
How long do we have? Look, I have been quite vocal about this, and that's a big deal for me, as you know. I'm a quietly spoken human who just likes to get on with things, but this is the whole fixation around female founders is a problem. It's a part of the ecosystem that is fundamentally broken. I am a first-time co-founder. I'm a non-tech tech founder. And I am a female founder in a sea of males. Now, I didn't actually have, it probably sounds incredibly naive, but I didn't actually have that pointed out to me until we lent into our first capital raise, where we start to, as you do your diligence, you build out your deck, you approach certain investors, you get feedback. It's an incredibly lengthy cycle where you are constantly reinventing yourself and at the same time having to stay true to your core purpose and not really pander to other people's expectations. It was during that process that I actually had an angel investor who I can proudly say did not go on to invest, nor did we want to invest in Humanico, who said to me, oh, Fee, it's actually really easy. You just need to play the female founder card. And I was like, what?
What does that even mean?
What does that even mean? And I said the same thing, and I'm like, hang on a second. I am a human. I'm a human here who is trying to solve a real problem that exists in the world of work. Why should it matter what my gender is? And that was the very beginning of our journey. And I think when you start to peel it back, we are in a unique situation where we are a co-founding male-female pair. There's been a lot of interest and a lot of programs that have been developed through female founders. There's a lot of people who are trying to champion and be a voice for female founders in the ecosystem, but so much of that is disingenuous. As soon as you start to read the fine print, you understand the loopholes. And for us, that came down to fundamentally, we are 50-50. We have been since day one of Humanico. And we'll always remain 50-50 in our equity in the business. Again, it was suggested that we actually tweak that, and that I have 51% and that Paul has 49%, just so we can access some of these grants and some of these initiatives that are designed to try and support female founders, which of course we didn't do. Fast forward, we were able to successfully raise capital in a pre-seed round. We just closed out our seed round last year as well, and we are well supported by our own very diverse group of angel investors who truly value the power of this partnership at the core. They believe in the vision and the mission of Humanico, and they believe in my part to play to lead that into the future. So we have an awfully long way to go. It's something that needs addressing 100%. When you look at the investment, the capital investment in the startup ecosystem in Australia, 3/4 of that investment is still going to solo male founders or male co-founding teams. That is not good enough. The data and the evidence is so widespread now to talk to the power of having diverse teams, full stop, across the board. At some point, I'm really hoping that the investor community puts their money where their mouth is, and outside of ticking boxes and, again, talking to disingenuous notions around purpose statements, the same thing is true here through investor completely lost the word. It'll come to me. When the investors have the framework of which they are judging their criteria to make the investment, it is one thing to publicly say that they have metrics around investing in female investors. It's quite the other to actually invest in the human who is behind the vision and believe in them to be the right human to drive the outcomes that you are seeking to achieve, regardless of their race, their age, their gender. It really shouldn't matter. So there's a lot of work to go there. And I will, as I become more and more comfortable in the space, talk about that more, because it's got to shift. I can't imagine my children coming through this ecosystem if they follow the path down the entrepreneur journey and it's still like this when they get here. That's a problem.
Well, I will certainly be championing you, owning your voice and really
Thanks,
stepping into your power in this space as a voice for every woman and every daughter out there in the world. Guys, I'm wondering, is there anything that you feel like is important to share with our audience that you haven't already shared today that we haven't covered off?
Probably timing, I think. And that's not timing for Humanico, it's timing for the world. So, when we built Humanico, we built it all in from the word go. It's built for scale, it's built for global, it's built for impact. Had we done this 5 years earlier, I'm not sure we would have been successful. I don't think
That's a good point.
Humanity or the workforce or people were ready for such an innovative solution. We had a meeting this morning where we've been invited to a closed-door session later on this month, and the person running that said, I need you to go and stir things up. I want you to be your true selves. I want you to be provocative, because you need to be provocative. We need to make change. So for me, it's around timing, and it's a message to leaders around build sustainable business models that talk to your human asset, not quarterly business models that talk to your quarterly performance based on numbers alone. We're getting there. We're not quite there yet. But for me, I'd probably say timing is right now, both locally and globally. And for us, that's great. We ideated and we built the business through COVID, which actually is a really good time to build a disruptive business, an innovative business. But now's the time to lean into this conversation.
I'll add to that, again, through the lens of timing. I think for me, it's very much down to the if not us, then who, and if not now, then when.
Yeah.
Because there is a problem, as we spoke about earlier. We've been through, as humanity, we've been through a global people crisis. We've come out the other side of that, where both the employee and the employer expectations have shifted demonstrably. If companies are not waking up to that fact, and if companies are not prepared to invest in their greatest asset, frankly, they won't have any. Yeah. So we are, whether it's Humanico, whether it's another solution that's also seeming to address the same problem, there is no excuse to do nothing.
Let's not go backwards, right? We've seen some of the rhetoric in the last 6 months. You touched upon leaders not understanding. We can't go backwards. We have to go forwards for the sake of humanity.
Last question, and I think I may know the answer to this. If you guys had access to a global billboard and you could share one word, one phrase, one sentence, what would it be?
It's a really good question, and it's one that we
Pontificated.
We did pontificate, and we didn't land on the same place. And for me, it's very, very it's unsurprising that I would say everyone matters. So for me,
that is my guess.
That is at the essence of everything that we're doing. But actually, Bex, I think if I had a billboard and I had global vision, the statement I would want to put up there is "I am ... and actually encourage people to think through the lens of who they are and why it matters. Yes, absolutely, in the fine print on that billboard would be a spiel about Humanico. But fundamentally at that core, I think the time is right to actually challenge individuals to think about who they are. What does that mean? I think we've seen this lovely shift in terms of workplace integration. Now, work-life balance is no longer work-life balance, it's work-life integration. Who we are at work should be absolutely no different to who we are at home. So I'd love to actually put that statement up there and challenge people to complete the sentence, I am.
Yeah, lean into the courage to answer it.
Absolutely.
Speak it, write it, know it.
Exactly.
Love it. How about you, Paul?
Look, I think I'm with Fee on balance. I quite like the idea of literally human plus I plus co, ? To create some curiosity.
Yeah.
But I love that Mark Twain quote when you talk about, the two most important times of your life, when you're first born, but more importantly, when you find out why.
Yeah. ?
Human plus I plus co. So I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
We probably just need a bit more time to play with it.
I am, and that quote equals the DNA of purpose. It has been such a joy. Like, really, I've had so much fun today. It's been wonderful to have the chance to hold space for what has been an extraordinary ride with Humanico. I've had the privilege of watching it unfold from the sidelines, and the energy of Humanico is electric. I can't wait to see what happens next. I really hope I can have you back on the podcast again for the next iteration of this journey. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can our listeners find you?
Look, thanks for having us, Beck. It's been a privilege to be here today and to share our story. Listeners can head to www.humanico.co, find out more information there, or also find us across the socials on LinkedIn, Insta and Facebook.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me on the DNA of Purpose podcast.